Yes, and actually, it's funny. Did you see? No, no, you didn't. What I tried was state conference. That's right. And they're talking to the kids how much they
Oh,
loved
it's
it.
100% pure.
Why did I leave all this up here?
Alrighty, good evening, everyone. If you are here for public comment, we have cards at the entryways, and if you are a student, please make sure you highlight and check that you are a student so that we can get you in the appropriate section of our public comment. We want to welcome you to the March 20, 2023 Monday regular school board for Grand Rapids Public Schools. We appreciate your presence at the meeting. We respectfully request that you turn off your cellular phones and refrain from clapping, cheering, or making audible comments. We invite you to make formal public comment during the designated times on either agenda or non-agenda items, or both if you wish. Please fill out the comment cards at our entryways if you are interested in making public comment, and public comment is limited to 3 minutes. Ms. Lewis, would you please call the roll?
Yes, I will. All right, papers. Okay, Mr. Reitman?
Present.
Ms. Lewis is here. Ms. Melton? Present. Mr. Rodriguez? Here. Mr. Ross?
Present.
Ms. Shockey? Here. Ms. Wade?
She just stepped out. She'll be back in a second.
I'm sorry. Ms. Davis?
Here.
President Williams?
Present.
I have a quorum.
Alrighty. And we have to approve our agenda for this evening. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, same sign. Thank you. And we'll begin with celebrations. Dr.
All
Roby?
right. Good evening, everyone. Happy spring. We are 1 hour into spring officially. And with that, we have lots. Come on, it's spring. You got to be happy that, you know.
I was confused about 1 hour.
Well, no, because it officially began at 5:24.
Okay, all right, gotcha. Thank you. Thank you.
I didn't know there was a time.
Yeah,
There is
that was my silence. I was like, 1 hour. Okay, thank you.
So we are in spring.
Sunset and so on and so forth.
There,
The
there we go.
lunar
You know,
thing.
your superintendent can be very technical sometimes. So we want to begin the evening with celebrations. And of course, we're going to begin with Mr. Hendricks, our Executive Director of Communications. One of the things that we are doing this year is trying to get better and being intentional about telling our stories. And so we want to take ownership for the work, all of the great things that are taking place across our district. And Mr. Hendricks is going to start us off with telling some stories.
Yes, good evening. I like that you said, of course, we're going to begin with. Good evening, President Williams, Dr. Roby, and the rest of the board. Each week, we track what stories we've been able to tell and highlight for the district. And what I found in this role is that it's not a hard story to sell. That when we seize those opportunities to let people know what's happening inside of our schools and invite them in, that there's been a real openness in our community for receiving those stories and telling them, and sometimes that comes through our media partners. So we put together a little bit of a mashup, just showcasing over just the last couple weeks how we've been able to tell our story.
Today started with a march, but as it does, it became about so much more than that. It became about a celebration of legacy through unity and the commitment of Cesar Chavez that together we can overcome any obstacle by believing si se puede.
From humble beginnings, Cesar created greatness. Cesar went to 34 schools in 8 years. Now, he could have given up, right? But he didn't.
Funding approved to make free breakfast and lunches for all students in Michigan. Grand Rapids Public Schools is already ahead of the curve.
Hi, I'm Hillary Skolten. Hi, nice to meet you.
Congresswoman Hillary Skolten sitting down today with some of her youngest constituents. A group of 6th graders at Harrison Park Elementary reached out to Skolten to interview her for a class documentary. And to their surprise, she agreed.
1,000 fifth graders in Grand Rapids are all reading the same book. It's called One Book, One City for Kids. It's an annual reading program sponsored by the Grand Rapids Public Library. This year's title, Isaiah Dunn is My Hero, is written by Kelly J. Baptist, an author from right here in West Michigan.
Teen on Your Side, Teacher of the Week, sponsored by Robinson Dental.
This next Teacher of the Week tells me not everyone can say they have fun at work every single day like she can. We got to see what makes her days at school so much fun when we stopped by Aberdeen Academy for the surprise.
That makes me feel wonderful. It's like, you know, you do the job and you love what you do, but it's nice to sometimes just be recognized that you are making your best effort for your children.
She is an absolute treasure, and we are so lucky to have her here.
The Wood TV 8 Student of the Week is brought to you by MSU Federal Credit Union.
This week we're featuring two students. The first is someone who stands out as an athlete and an academic. Ashray Shabra is a senior at City High Middle School in Grand Rapids.
But he plays sports for Ottawa Hills High School. He plays just about everything, including ski racing. He also has a 4.0 GPA. This past football season, he was named to the Division II Academic All-State football team.
I think a big lesson I've learned is that it's so important to, you know, make sure that this isn't interfering necessarily with like your relationships and your friendships and stuff like that. Because when we focus so much on just sports and, you know, academics, you know, you got to find a balance between that, but also like you got to make sure it's not costing you other things in your life. So, you know, I guess I've been really lucky to have been able to find that balance. And it kind of forced me to, because I knew that if I wanted to dedicate as much time as I was to sports, then I also had to be able to, you know, keep up everything else as well.
All right. Sorry the video lagged a little bit there, but you got the picture from the audio of our wonderful scholars and teachers being able to be a part of telling our story. So we're going to be looking for creative ways to continue doing that, and all of you will be a part of that process if you're willing. So we're excited to move that forward. So thanks for watching.
All right. Next, I'm going to invite up Miss Rhonda Cribbs and Sherry Lynn No and friends donation, as they have been very generous to good partners to our scholars at Grand Rapids Public Schools.
I'm also asking my assistant to come forward because she's the one that actually works most closely with Sherry Lynn. And we've got just a very brief little PowerPoint presentation that we put together, but go ahead and have a seat, Sherry Lynn. See, as Julie does our technical, she keeps me straight with all my technical assistants here. There we go. So a couple of years ago, I think, and I've lost track of time because it goes too quickly, Sherry Lynn Noe reached out to GRPS and said, I'd like to make some donations. So from there, this wonderful relationship has blossomed, and she does an incredible amount for us. So I'll turn it over and let Tasha Senna, my new assistant, talk us through it a little bit.
All right. It takes a big heart to shape little minds. Good evening, everyone, and a special hello to Sherry Lynn, Noah, and friends. My name is Tasha Senna, and I serve as the executive assistant to Ms. Rhonda Cribbs, Chief Financial Officer, and I have just recently taken over the responsibility of coordinating donations in our department. Our team would like to take a moment this evening to show our appreciation and our gratitude for the generosity and the abundance of donations from your group. With the continued support of Sherry Lynn Noah and friends, hundreds and thousands of GRPS scholars and their families have been impacted by your kindness. This past year alone, your group has donated over $90,000 in goods to our scholars. That included school supplies, coats, hats, mittens, just to name a few of those goods. The contributions that you all have made is evidence of your belief in quality education to our scholars, and for that, we are truly grateful. On behalf of the entire GRPS staff, our students, and families, we thank you very much, Sherry. And then I would also like to call up my colleague, Mary Spalding, to say a couple of words.
It's very appropriate that we honor you, Sherry Lynn, being that this is Women's History Month. And truly, you are a champion of donors, and that's proven because you have gone out and you have collected thousands of dollars, not just thousands of cans, that's thousands of dollars worth of soda cans. You've donated your personal donations, and you have inspired a team of 75+ donors. And that's in addition to facilitating all of the donations and distribution, and we just so appreciate that. Your care for scholars is unmatched. You're community-minded, and GRPS is one of many districts and agencies that Sherry Lynn works with. We're very fortunate to be one of, I think, your favorites. And the respect that you show to our scholars, especially the care for our most vulnerable and marginalized population, is just unmatched. One of the things I wanted to share is that the way you handle the donations, they come in plastic bags, thousands of plastic bags. They're not trash bags, they are plastic bags. And when I see Sherry handling each bag, she's not just tossing them and shoving them. It's every bag is precious. And there was one delivery when we went into the school, we're carrying all these bags in through the cafeteria, and they're black plastic bags, so you can't see in them. But the students all simultaneously just jumped up. They knew that it was donations and cheered. And that is just remarkable. And we just so appreciate you, Sherry Lynn. Thank you. And we do have a couple of little things we'd like to present to you as a token of our appreciation. Thank you, Sherry. Thank you.
Would you like to say anything?
Ms. Noe, would you like to say anything?
I don't know if you know this, but I probably started with Grand Rapids Public about 12, 13 years ago. I worked with Mary Ann Persashenko and through Sibley Elementary, and I did 3 years of their summer garage sales, and then I just moved on to starting about 6, 7 years ago, this coat drive, and it started with just me and a couple friends getting together, and we donated maybe 25 coats, and then the next year it was 100 coats, and then the next year it was 250, and then last year it was 500.
Oh, no.
And actually, I'm sorry, last year in 2022, it was about 675 coats that were $60 to $120 each, brand new, and snow pants and boots and hats. I think we donated over 1,000 hand knit hats. And I'm just so honored to be able to go into the schools and present these, and it just means the world to me that you did this tonight. I appreciate it.
Thank you for your service.
Thank you. And look forward to continuing.
It's your birthday as
well?
Yeah, it's Saturday.
Oh,
Happy birthday.
all right. We have a couple of more celebrations, and this is really, I know that normally we have 1 or 2 celebrations, but there's a lot of good things that are taking place in our district, and I think it is important to acknowledge the hard work and the positive things that you see. And so I'm going to invite Mr. Larry Johnson to come up to talk about the African American Achievement Conference, and then following him, I will have Dr. Maida Gunnell talk about the Latino Conference Partnership.
And if I can, I'm going to ask Emmanuel Armstrong to join me as well. Good evening, President Williams, Dr. Roby, and other distinguished board members. This year marked the 8th annual African American Male Achievement Conference. This is a conference that many of the African American men in this room have been involved in, Mr. Ross, as well as Mr. Eatman when we first started this out. And we worked as a collaboration with the Grand Rapids Urban League, City of Grand Rapids Public Schools, Grand Rapids Community College, and Grand Valley State University. And it is, we believe, the largest gathering of African American men from the 8th through 12th grade in West Michigan, maybe even the state. One of the other highlights, and Mr. Armstrong will talk about the actual program itself, but the takeaways for us as we look at the data and share some of the successes in our wrap-up meetings, is the day of and preceding week after is some of the lowest days of suspensions for the African American male in the district. And we want to see how we can harness that and continue to do programs throughout the year so that we can help continue to reduce suspensions. It's not just Grand Rapids Public Schools anymore, but it encompasses all of our surrounding districts now, to include private parochial schools as well that have been invited. And I believe this year over 1,100 kings, we call them, 8th through 12th grade, with many black male volunteers that participated in the program. And we know all of you have supported in one way or another, and we just want to thank you for that as we are in the planning phase now for the ninth annual. Mr. Armstrong?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us. Like Mr. Johnson said before, we've been at the table. This has been a call from years ago, dating back around 13 years, where we did see that our data was showing that we had a population that was in dire need of us as men and also of the community. And so on this one day, it's usually at Wednesday during spring break for GRCC, we're there, and there's just so much energy around that day, where we surround young men with men from the community that represent certain career pathways that they'll go into. We encourage our young men to walk away with contact information, and this year we took a very streamlined focus on our African American fraternities, and they came out to serve as facilitators. We had over 80 facilitators coming there, so this is definitely a highlight of our year as we look to empower students. And we did ask the students years ago, Mr. Johnson specifically, what do they need from us? And the one thing that they told us, it wiped away our assumptions, but they wanted access to men in the community. And so this event, we know we can do more, but this event is one day, one event that leads up where men that head up our neurosurgeon departments in some of our hospitals, fathers, men and women that may be outside of the African American culture who need skill sets, or they're looking for ideas as they're raising foster children who identify with the African American experience. So this is one event that really highlights some of the good that's happening in our district and our community, and we're just happy that we can be a piece of writing our own story.
And finally, I know there's so many other individuals that's involved in this, but Paris McMurray helped co-chair this year with Mr. Armstrong, and I know Mr. Kurt Johnson, Melvin Atkins all played important roles, as well as Mr. Ross this year, and I know Mr. Eatman has been in and out and always there for consultation with us to help these programs go. And we can't do it without having the young men and the men in this community who have been successful and those who have some challenges, but yet we're able to come back around and provide some guidance to our young kings in this community. We're looking forward to growing the program. One of the outcomes that I know Mr. Ross heavily worked on was the barbershop conversations, and did a series of barbershop conversations, and those videos are out there that our young men are able to access and get some feedback from. and some suggestions and things of what they can do as they move through their life. So we're excited about year number 9 and hoping to grow the program. Maybe we can even include 7th graders at one point to get to that middle school level, because we think it has an impact. And then we're looking at trying to just do something, if not every other month, if something monthly, so that we can keep these young men engaged. Any questions? Mr. Ross, I know you've been involved since day one. Mr. Eatman, if you guys have any comments?
No, I think I just maybe underscore, I uplift Mr. Armstrong and the heavy lift that him and Mr. McMurray for sure definitely did. I don't think that can be overstated for sure.
Absolutely.
Definitely appreciate that. I think a running theme for the conference has been challenges, choices, and change. The running theme of that has really been just because you think about through life, that's really, kind of what things are about. We may all endure certain challenges, and that presents us with different choices to make on a daily basis, and hopefully produces some positive change. So we've really stayed with that theme, and asked our facilitators and our keynote speakers to try to highlight that theme, just hopefully have our young men armed to be better, to make better choices as they're faced with different challenges, so they can have some positive change in their respective lives. So I just think that theme has been strong, and I think it's something we'll probably continue, that theme. So
yeah, I would add that from day one, this has been something that GRPS has been committed to making sure that its scholars has been a part of. My involvement with it has been in and out, but definitely something that has been very supportive over the years as it has been there. So I am super, super excited to hear the continuation and the increase of the numbers of attendance on each year as it comes into that. The impact of this is significant. So I love the fact that you both are being humble up here, but to really emphasize the significance of what this is not something that you see districts or cities having cross-organizational entities being involved to better our youth across the city. Like, you don't come across many cities that invest from all sectors, business, education, government, to see the success of our young population having intentional outlets to be involved, but also to have mentors that can help pivot a significant change. It takes one interaction that can change a life. So to be able to see that firsthand, but not to undermine the importance of this event, it is significant. So I can encourage all of you in some form or fashion, if you can support this and even the Latinx one as well. It's extremely important, because it is our youth that's in our backyard, that is the next leaders, and how we pour into them now matters. And to have a dedicated city to help see that and want to impart that, that's world class right there. And so I don't want to underserve that or underemphasize it. The work that you guys both have been putting into this for years, and I've seen it firsthand. I've worked alongside both of you and Mr. Ross for this for several years, and planned a lot of these events as well. And so this is so powerful to hear. And definitely next time bring some pictures so you can share some of those things so people can actually see that, because it's not a small feat coming across multiple different school districts with over 1,100 students. That is not a small thing to coordinate and to keep there. So congratulations, and thank you for presenting.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead.
In closing, we do want to uplift the 5 organizations, our superintendents, our collegiate presidents, the CEOs of the Urban League of Western Michigan, and it's from their leadership to allow us to dream big, to pull something like this off. So we want to lift up that. And then in closing, our keynote speaker is a graduate student from GVSU, Mr. Abdul Sise. Our student highlight, we highlight GRPS students each year, and this year was Elijah Taylor. He's a graduating senior from Museum High School. He's going on to continue his education and his football career at Concordia University. And then for our musical selection, we highlighted the talents of our Alger Middle School drum line this year.
And our keynote speaker did such a wonderful job and interacted with our young men so well that we are actively pursuing him for employment here at GRPS. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Dr. Gunnell.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, Dr. Roby, President Williams, and distinguished board members. Today I have the great joy of introducing you to an alumni of Union High School who is now the executive director of the Hispanic Center of Western Michigan. So if Evelyn Esparza Gonzalez could please join me, and Gabby. They're going to talk to you about the partnership that we've had. The Latino Youth Conference has been going on for 24 years, and it is for specifically any Latino youth in Kent County that is an 8th grader, male and female. So that takes place every March, but this year we've had the opportunity to partnership with the Hispanic Center and Evelyn and Gabby. So I'm really pleased about the turnout of the Latino Youth Conference, especially this year. So with that.
So this has been an event in our community, like Maida mentioned, for the last 24 years. And so this is the second year that the Hispanic Center takes over this event and put something together for our Latinx youth. We're very honored to have that impact in our community. The goal of the conference is to cultivate an emotional and psychological worldview that is bigger than the challenges these youth people face. This conference provides a huge opportunity for local 8th graders to explore career paths at a critical time when they're headed into high school. This year, we were able to impact over 600 students, and so we are very grateful for the partnership that we have with Grand Rapids Public Schools. Over 60% of the students were part of GRPS, and we hope that that number can be increased in the next year. We are very grateful for the support that we received from Maida, Javier Cervantes, Bandu. They really made this event possible. Mr. Rodriguez was one of our volunteers at the event, and we're hoping that he can join us in our committee for next year. And now I'm going to introduce you to Gaby Cordova. She's actually the one leading most of the logistics of this event.
Thank you, Evelyn. The event featured over 35 facilitators from different organizations leading workshops designed on the following topics, which was health and wellness, which taught techniques for students to cope with their emotions when facing new challenges. The second was Latinidad, which was diversity among the Latino communities and the value of embracing our language and culture. Third was post-secondary education, which was pathways to rewarding career opportunities through universities, colleges, trade, technical, and professional schools. And lastly, banking for today and tomorrow, giving practical tips for developing good saving habits, bank account management, and credit card awareness. We created these topics by asking various students and principals on what they would like to see for this year's Latinx Youth Conference, and those are the 4 that they decided. From those 4 categories, there was over 20 breakout rooms that the students went to. The students went to 2 different of those categories, and the workshops were 45 minutes each. Also, after the workshops, the students were able to walk around the expo, which included different types of universities and organizations, which taught students even more to go through different career paths and also pursue their higher education. Also, for our keynote speaker, we had Latin Grammy nominee Lupita Infante, which we chose her because she was very the face of, like, with any barrier you can face, you can overcome it, because she received her bachelor's in music from the School of UCLA. And she also sang songs to the students and kept them motivated throughout the conference. Also, there were 4 different categories for scholarships, where the scholarships were $1,000 each, and luckily 2 of the students from GRPS were chosen. One was from Grand Rapids Public Museum, who won the Be a Storyteller scholarship, and the other was from Gerald R. Ford Academic Center, who won the Arts and Culture Scholarship. So they both received $1,000 to help them pursue their education, either if that goes to tuition or even school supplies. Once again, we're grateful for GRPS's partnership, and we look forward to their future collaboration.
Could we have the names of the students that won?
Yeah, so the first one was Kayla Arcos, which was from Grand Rapids Public Museum, and then the Gerard Ford one was, I don't remember her name.
That's okay.
Yeah,
That's all right.
I can't remember her, the last one, the second one. But she was from Gerald R. Ford Academic Center.
Questions?
Thank you very much.
That's a good highlighting story.
Thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Report from our scholar representatives. Mr. Liggett, I see Ms. Muhammad has water, so I'm gonna give her a moment. Mr. Liggett.
So at Grand Rapids Montessori, this week we were having an inclusion week. Today we wore crazy hats for inclusion. I decided to wear my work hat. And then tomorrow will be Wacky Socks Day, supporting Down syndrome awareness. Wednesday will be Comfortable, Be You, and we'll also be learning some basic sign language. Thursday is Wear Your GRM School Spirit, where we will learn about adaptive and assistive technology. And then Friday is Superhero Day, and we have a guest speaker coming in our 6th hour. Moving on, since March is Reading Month, Grand Rapids Montessori and Barnes Noble partnered, and high school students were able to receive 5 free books. So that was an amazing opportunity, and I'm already on my 3rd book. So that's amazing. And then the Superintendent Scholar Advisory Council meeting has a meeting this Wednesday where we'll be going to the Nutritional Center.
Is that a new haircut too?
Yes.
Okay. Keep us on our toes, Mr. Liggett. And Ms. Muhammad.
The ROTC drill team at Union High School won 15 trophies at a national competition and first place in armed and unarmed competition. And also the Red Hawk staff and scholars celebrated our 9th annual Red Hawk Acts of Kindness and this past Friday. And we were just treated with cookies made from students from KCTC, so it was pretty nice.
Awesome. Thank you. And next we have our secretary's report.
Yes. The Finance Committee will be meeting on Monday, March 27th at 4:30 in the Administration Building in the board chambers. The City Board Liaison Committee will be meeting on Wednesday, April the 12th at 2:30 in the Administration Library Building, room 112.
Committee chair updates. We'll go with Ms. Shockey, Ad Hoc Facilities Committee.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. So the Ad Hoc Facilities Committee met last week, and we discussed the Kensington property, which is currently or was out for request for use. And we received 3 proposals, but this board voted on a resolution to extend the decision-making period so that we could go to the neighborhood and have an opportunity for neighbors to tell us what they desire in their community as we rethink what that Kensington building and property will become. And so the district is preparing for that town hall on April 12th, I believe, at Southwest Middle High School. And we also talked about ways to be inclusive and the opportunity to contribute to that conversation, even for our neighbors who aren't able to make it. And so strategies around effective communication and a way to be responsive either via mail or digital email. So looking forward to that community conversation around that property. We also received some updates on current projects, specifically focused on arts and athletics in the district. We do have some work underway at Union High School that includes improvements to the weight room, our soccer field scoreboard, and also some important auditorium upgrades. And Ottawa Hills High School, the work is continuing on the design and the solution for the pool there. We know that budget's about $625,000 to repair the pool, and the district hopes to have that complete and open by winter of 2024. A great idea that came out of Trustee Eatman was to have a facilities projects webpage on our website so that we can also communicate progress on these projects and also just updates on what we're doing around facilities in the district. So a great idea. Thank you, Mr. Eatman. And then lastly, we spent some time going back through our Phase 1 survey results for the facilities master plan, reminded ourselves what our scholars and staff and community had requested of us as we reimagine Grand Rapids Public Schools, and talked a lot about our future engagement strategy and the importance of returning back to those who responded to the survey to say, this is what we heard, did we hear you right? And continuing to move forward then in what will be Phase 2 engagement in the oncoming months.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Shockey?
I'd like to know, do we have those neighborhood meetings set up that,
For Kensington?
yeah,
April 12th.
that's April 12th, okay.
And just really quickly, there will be a communication that goes out in the next week or so that we're going to flyer the appropriate neighbors that live within that footprint.
500 feet.
Yeah.
Ready? Legislative committee update?
Yes, we just finished our first meeting, and we sent our lobbyists the way with ideas that we would like to see in our policy and our priorities for the year. So that will be presented to us next month, and then we'll bring it to all of you.
Any questions? All righty, moving on to the superintendent's report.
All right. Good evening again. So just kind of tagging back onto what Ms. Schottky shared about the facilities master plan, we are continuing to fine-tune that plan as well as strategies and timelines. Our Eureka group has begun that internal and external engagement, specifically reaching out to schools so that they are part of the co-design team and ensuring that the work as we are working through what this plan will be are specifically included. The task of our board has been to ensure that we get underrepresented groups, because that's something that we learned through our town halls and surveys, that our underrepresented groups have not always been engaged, and so very intentionally seeking out that particular voice and looking forward to sharing some information that'll be going forward in the new following spring break as to how we are sharing more broadly with our community as to the plans related to our master plan. ESSER update. So I'm going to invite Ms. Cribbs up to provide an ESSER update, and I will tee up our ESSER update specifically around kind of what is the vision for ESSER. As you all are aware, ESSER became available, the funds became available due to the response for COVID supports in the pandemic. There have been 3 different levels of ESSER, ESSER 1, 2, and 3, and there are certain guidelines that we must fall within. Very generally speaking, our work with ESSER and our vision for ESSER is to ensure that our scholars who have been most impacted as children around learning loss and other experiences, that we are programmatically and technically providing resources and supports, and you'll hear some things that Ms. Cribbs will specifically go into, but as an example, just to kind of draw your attention to some of that, Sammy just mentioned the books. Every scholar in our district has the opportunity in partnership with a local company to have 5 books at home, and we're making a commitment to doing that for the next 5 years so that we are building classroom libraries. And what's important and significant about that, as an example, is that children often don't always have books at home, and we're trying to ensure that literacy is a very fundamental part of a home. And over the 5 years, that's 25 books that each child will have for his or her own library. And if they have siblings, they will also have access to those books and resources as well. And so our vision, overall vision, is to ensure the programmatic pieces of how do we address learning loss, and then also ensuring that because this is not recursive money, that it has a sunset date, that we are looking at programs that we can also use to develop staff and learning loss. So it might be professional learning or materials and things of that nature, but it's how do we address the response to the pandemic now and into the future, and then not put ourselves in a position where we're not able to continually support certain things. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer.
Okay, good evening again. And I apologize, I was developed this tickle in my throat, so I did bring my water out with me, and hopefully we'll get through this here. But so actually almost 3 years ago exactly, we started on this COVID pandemic journey. First there was the initial shutdown. We didn't know what that meant, but we learned how to work remotely to make sure our employees still got paid and our vendors got paid. Made it for the our food service department adapted very quickly and developed grab and go, so our scholars could still have available breakfast and lunch. And then very quickly, we had to develop a virtual learning system. I mean, that, if you think about it, I think it was early May, so shortly 6 weeks after we shut down, we had a virtual learning system up and running. So it was a time of great uncertainty and definitely a lot of rapid change. So during that time, we did receive a lot of grants over the last few years. They've helped with our initial response to our new environment and through our continuing and recovery as well. We received funding from local sources, including several of our family and community local foundations, state sources, and federal sources. As Dr. Roby mentioned, initially a lot of these grants were coming through and we used the money for cleaning materials, PPE, technology to get those one-to-one devices, curriculum resources to support the virtual learning, and those types of things. And it's evolved over the last couple of years. When SR 2 and 3 came out, they were pretty close together, and all of a sudden we had a lot larger pot of money to work with. So we did our initial planning with these grants together. So out on our website is our first draft of an SR 2 and 3 plan together. Our goal was to spend these funds in ways to strengthen our district for the long term in various areas through the district. So there's a category for academics, there was a category for fine arts and athletics, facilities. We also intentionally wanted to build our fund balance up because we were at that time right at that early morning system 5% fund balance. So we intentionally wanted to use these funds to get off from that bottom rung and move up just a little bit, so we've got to make some breathing room in there too. So that initial plan is, I believe, still out on our website. The other thing we have intentionally done, as Dr. Roby noticed, these are one-time funds. So we wanted to use them for one-time uses, not build in something that we would not be able to sustain. So there are relatively few positions that we are trying to fund out of these funds, or new positions. I'll talk in a few minutes about some other ways we are using our ESSER funds for positions. But the timelines for these grants vary. We've got it, they started and they actually backdated them to March 13th. So if you want to have a date and delved in your brain, it's March 13th, 2020 is when this all started. And they go through September 30th, 2024. Currently, our total amount is approximately $128.9 million. And the largest of this grant is our ESSER 3, which is about $74 million. To kind of put that a little bit in perspective, before COVID, our annual grant budget was about $45 million. So these grants have tripled our grant budget in the last 3 years. So we're not using them all up, obviously, in one single year, but it's been used over the last 3 years. But I just can't emphasize enough that it's one-time funding, and it will end on September 30th, 2024. So this next graph, especially when you first see it, can be, a little overwhelming. There we go. But it highlights, and I saw somebody else used it, so I wanted to put our numbers in and see what they look like. So there are 16 different grants that we've gotten to support our work. All of these grants come with different requirements and different things, allowable uses that we can spend it on, different reporting requirements. It starts in March 2020 and ends with that first quarter of our fiscal year of 25, which is the September 30th, 24. So the beginning year and the ending year are a little misleading because it's really only a quarter. So a vast majority of our spending will happen between July 1st, 2020 and June 30th, 2024. The other thing that's been challenging with these grants is they were putting the money out and then telling us later how we could spend it. So requirements have changed frequently, and sometimes after we've spent the money. So it's causing us to adapt and frequently, and you change, and you're like, okay, I can't fit in this grant. Could it fit in this grant? What does that look like? So we've adapted. We went, our key thing, if those of you that have worked with me, is I'm a rule follower, so I'm trying to follow all the rules and make sure that we're appropriately using all the funding. But then at least 3 of the major grants in there, the ESSER 1, ESSER Ed Equity, and the GEAR funding, all required us to do allocations out to the private schools within our boundaries. So not only were we dealing with our purchasing issues and what we needed to do and wanted to do, we were also coordinating with our private school partners. So I guess part of it really highlights to me is this money goes away and we're on the edge of a cliff. So business managers will talk about the funding cliff that we're on, and you'll hear me talk about it as well. So I just wanted to list out a lot of our grants, especially the smaller early ones, are all fully expended, and here's a long list of them. I'm not going to read it to you, but they're a lot. We've gotten through those. The grants that are continuing, there we go, into our current fiscal year, we have our the credit recovery grant. It's still available. It was still available for us to use for our high school credit recovery summer program last summer. It's now ended, and we fully extended the part that we could. The ESSER 2 benchmark assessment grant, there was one made available last year, and there's another one this year to help cover the cost of our MAP assessments. And the McKinney-Vento ARP homeless grant is actually just a new grant that became available in the last month, and I just got the grant funds available on it this afternoon. So we've put in our application. It has available funds to assist our scholars who are experiencing this situation, and one of the ways we're looking to use these funds is to hire an additional coordinator to work with families. It's a high need and
layered and nuanced. If I can just give an example with McKinney-Vento, with homelessness, we are responsible as the home district if a family or a child becomes homeless sometime during the course of the school year and moves outside of our district, for example, to keep and stabilize their educational experience. The home district where they became homeless is responsible for transportation to and from their location of where they found housing through back to school. And that's also, other things that we look to support, like participation in sports, snacks, food, extra things that, if they're participating in after-school programming so that they don't lose out on that academic experience. But that's very, layered and nuanced. And if you imagine someone who might live, and we have, a situation where someone lives 40 miles outside of the GRPS footprint, that's the travel time and the expense and things like that. But we want to make sure that our most vulnerable students are supported in that way.
Okay, so now moving into ESSER 2. It's approximately $32.9 million, and it expires at September 30th, 2023. This grant requires an application with MDE, including details of how we're going to spend the funds. Each expenditure has to be included in the application and approved by MDE. So one of the challenges that I mentioned earlier is that MDE is receiving new guidance too as we're going. So every time we submit an amendment to our application, they go back through the whole thing again. And that's where sometimes things have gotten flagged out where it was approved in an earlier version, and now they've come back and said, well, maybe not. So, and I mentioned earlier, if we run into those situations, we look for the best available funding and move the expenses. So another unusual feature of this grant, and with it being federal funds, and it also applies to ESSER 3, is that supplanting is allowed. So typically with federal grants, it has to supplement what we're doing and not supplant. But ESSER 2 came in and was the first one where ESSER 1 we could supplant as well. So it's like this is a new concept, using federal funding and moving expenses around. So that's in our original plan for ESSER 2 and 3. When you look at it, we had plans in there for athletics and facilities. that's one of the things as the new guidance came out, and that, especially in the fall of 2021, it became apparent that these would not either be allowable or it would be difficult for us to meet the timelines. So a lot of those facility plans with construction and delays and supply chain issues, we just really became concerned about, okay, if we plan to spend, I think it was $20 million on facilities, would we actually be able to complete them in time with these grant funding deadlines? So that's where we started to alter our plan for the ESSER 2 and 3 and did a little bit more, or a lot more supplanting with some allowable costs to free up general fund dollars to still be able to do the intent of our ESSER 2 and 3 plan with athletics and facility type improvements. So we're following the intent, it's just not actually that same funding source. So there's a list there, but words get to a little bit. So I get to the pie graph on this one because we have submitted a grant application, and we are at this planning to have that almost fully expended by June 30th. We do have summer school budgeted in here again for this summer, so there will be some costs that still come through the end of summer school in July. But we are on track to have this grant, the whole $32.9 million spent. And here's some of the items that we've planned under curriculum. We've got we had additional teacher resource materials. This is one that came through pretty early in the grant, where some of our teachers were sharing resource materials, which worked when you were physically in the building. But when we were working virtually and remote, everybody really needed to have their own resources at their own home to be able to do those things. We've got several different software programs in there, whether it's our literacy with ReadyGen, Words They're Wearing, My Perspectives, Go Math, Discovery Science, Mystery Science, and Studies Weekly Science. Several of those were additional purchases in addition to what we had been doing originally, kind of to get another layer of support, academic support to students in another way. We added software programs for Tier 2 and 3 interventions like Lexia Core 5, IXL, Imagine Learning. We added learning management systems, Schoology and Seesaw. Those of you that are parents in our district probably had to learn to navigate Schoology or Seesaw. Technologies continue to be a huge need. We have a large portion of it in here, whether it's the student devices with Chrome bags and iPads. We've also been able to update our staff devices and have new Surface Pros for them. Classroom technologies is another need. A lot of our technology systems in our classrooms were aging and way past their prime, so we are working now to bring those and upgrade those. The other part that's in there, which you don't think about until you realize you just gave a child a computer, but the power cords, the batteries, and the headsets also have to have we've got a substantial line item in there to replace power cords that get lost or misused or whatever may happen. We've also included software in there to help manage our technology. There's several in there that Craig and crew have added in to help better monitor what we've got going on with all of our technology. That's our ESSER 2 plan. ESSER 3 is the big one, but again, our funds must be used by September 30th, 2024. We did start spending and drawing down on a few things in that grant last year. We're on track this year to spend about another $25 to $28 million this year. So we'll still have a significant portion to spend next year. But one thing with ESSER 2, it requires the application with MDE with those very detailed descriptions, and sometimes it's a challenge because they want a lot of detail, but they also set a character limit. So we have to be sometimes creative in how we write those descriptions. But it's coming even more requirements on it. One of the things they've got in there is a required 20% set aside to address learning loss, and there's also a maintenance of equity, which is a new terminology for us. But with that 20% set specific categories of what they will count for that. One of the things we thought would be including our summer school or intersessions that we're running. But technically, that doesn't fall into one of the categories that they count for addressing learning loss. So this is another where you start to learn to navigate what their requirements are. But if we code it under the category for evidence-based learning, we can count it.
So if I can just add specifically around the maintenance of equity, that's defined as addressing the unique needs of children who might have other vulnerabilities. They might have disabilities, they might be English language learners, they might be homeless, second language, maybe in foster care. And so it's making sure that oftentimes with children with additional needs, there's other layers of delivery that need to be accessible to those young people. And so that's an equitable kind of approach that we're differentiating kind of some of those supports and resources for them.
Thank you for defining that.
I figured that was going to be a question coming up, so I was trying to. All right.
So one thing MDE has noted out to us is they've already received an intense level of oversight on these grants, especially for ESSER 3 from the U.S. Department of Ed. So they've told us to expect more aggressive monitoring and auditing of these funds. Make sure to document everything and stay away from items that are in the gray area. And remain clearly in the black and white portion of allowable uses, and that's almost a word-for-word quote from MDE. So in that, we're trying to stay to that higher standard, get to not just allowable, what's justifiable, making sure what we're putting in those applications is the best use of the funds that we can get in there. And when I get frustrated because the rules have changed after we've done something, I have to come back to, well, they're just trying to keep us out of trouble when the auditors show up in 3 years. So just like, okay, take a deep breath and we'll figure it out. So as I mentioned, we are in the process of amending our application. So I don't have good numbers for you because they're like changing daily and hourly right now. So we'll circle back on what that plan looks like. But we do have a list, but it's a long list like it shows up in the other one. But a lot of the items are similar in a continuation of what we spent on ESSER 2. There are some more unique items that we have in our ESSER 3. This is where we've put our tutoring, which includes the multifaceted ways of doing it, whether it's our intersession programs or the holiday and spring breaks. We do have staff holding after-school sessions. We've not been able to get that program working in each of our buildings, but some of our buildings have been able to. But then the next layer in that we're adding is that book nook program that you've heard about. We've included additional academic supplies, especially for art and music and library, and we're looking to include some more STEM materials in this next amendment. And then Sammy stole my thunder with the Barnes & Noble, the book fair still allows scholars to take home 5 books. I know in our business office, one of our staff people is a parent, and she came home and she brought me in the picture the next morning. She said, my daughter got these books and she doesn't read anymore, but she was so excited, but she's now reading. So I just wanted to share that with it. This is one part of our ESSER funding that is directly impacting our scholars, and hopefully we'll get some of them more excited about actually reading a book again. I know when my sons hit high school, it was, what? The enrichment trips, and I think we had the presentation recently on Close Up. That is not something we would have been able to do in another way. And to be able to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to send a large number of students last year, this year, and we're planning to do it again next year. So, it's these enrichment trips, but it's also, we're using them for some of our elementary grade level trips as well, whether it's the art museum or I think Frederick Meyer Gardens is another grade level trip. So we've included our dual enrollment and expanding our partnerships with area colleges and university, like the new program at Innovation Central with Western Michigan University that's expanded this year. One of the areas that we heard from our listening sessions was the need for additional mental health therapists. We've hired 16 new positions, so this is one of the places where we have intentionally added positions. When we first started our plan, we weren't going to add this many, but the need is there. And so we're like, we'll have to look ongoing how we're going to alter our plans to make sure it stays sustainable. But that was such a high need that we needed to address that as well. And as Dr. Roby mentioned in our kickoff, one of the other things we've done is for our staff professional learning, whether it's consultants and bringing in, like Dr. Tammy Campbell's been working with our staff, or attending national conferences. That's not something we would have been able to do, is to send staff to national conferences. So a group of our principals attended the Model School Conference in their last year, and they're planning and doing that again this year. So just in short, these COVID funding grants helped us initially navigate the global pandemic by providing funds for cleaning supplies and PPE, develop virtual learning, and strengthen our curriculum resources, and add new technology for our scholars and staff. There's been challenges. We've had the changing guidelines. We've had supply chain issues that have hit us at times where we've like, well, that's not going to work, so let's find something different. But we strategically tried to use these one-time funds to improve GRPS for the longer term. That's one thing, I guess, as we go through it, is I want to come out better on the other side of this. One of the things we thought we would be able to do would to be load up on the, let's buy a 6 years curriculum agreement on June 30th of 2024. But with accounting rules and MDE, new guidance from U.S. Department of Ed, we're not going to be able to do those things. So, but we could buy, for example, flexible furniture for buildings. And those tables or the desks and the chairs will still be with us 10 years from now. So it's just kind of reshaping how we come out of this better and stronger. We're going to continue this process over the next 18 months. One thing, as I sit through these facility master plan meetings and with our community, I've always got that filter on in my head of when I hear community input. And so it's not a specifically ESSER input session, but I'm listening. What are the needs? And then I come back and hit our executive directors or executive cabinet and say, I heard this, what can we do? So that's where we're trying to strengthen it, get back out to what it is. So we're entering this final year. We're looking at what's working, what do we want to continue, and then we'll be refining our sustainability plans for this programs once the funding is gone. So this is one with Dr. Randy Lovelady Mitchell is really looking especially at those academic programs. What do we want this to look like in the future, and braiding our funding as we go forward. So that's it didn't seem like quick, I'm sure, but a quick update on what ESSER 2 and 3 and our previous ESSER grants have done. So.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Colleagues, are there any questions?
I have a quick question for you, your last statement. You said, can you repeat what you stated about the sustainability of this? You're going to wait until after the funds are completed before you?
That's ongoing work. So as we've built the plans, that's always kind of in the back of our mind is, okay, if we're going to put something in here, how are we going to sustain it? So we'll continue to look at that. I'm just going to use it as an example. We've got a lot of different curriculum programs. It's been a lot for our staff to learn. I don't know that we can sustain all of them, but what's working? What's making the biggest impact? So those are the conversations that we're having and will continue to have to define, what does it look like?
Thank you.
Just a little input. The mental health clinicians that are in the schools, I don't know if everybody knows this because I just found out. My daughter has one at Southwest Middle High, but they actually see our students as clients, so they are actually getting therapy, and they have them like that's their therapist is right there at school with them. And I thought that was so amazing. I just thought he was like there just in case somebody needed him, but he's like, no, I have a client coming. I'm like, what? Like, so they're in this school and your therapist is there all day, every day. So, I mean, like, that is just the ideal situation for a child who needs their therapist. You know, they don't have to call him, they don't have to get an appointment. He's right there, and I think that is just like alone is very, it just feels good as a parent to know that that's happening in the school. So thank you for that.
Well, and I am appreciative to hear about how you are, I was the treasurer at the time when this all went in effect, and to see how we tried to preserve our general fund dollars was a work, but I appreciate it. And as we look to the future and we even hear about our banking crisis, to know that this is expanding far and wide, and for us to do what we can to preserve those dollars is going to be so very important. These things could change in the way we are getting our lovely property tax dollars and things of that nature. There could be some big changes coming ahead, so I appreciate that. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Wonderful. I want to acknowledge that we did not have any public comment on board agenda items only, or from our union rep, or any of our scholars. We don't have any action items. And I would ask for a motion for our consent agenda grouping.
Support.
Mr. Reitman?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis, yes. Ms. Melton?
Yes.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yes.
Mr. Ross?
Yes.
Ms. Shockey?
Yes.
Ms. Wade?
Yes.
Ms. Davis?
Yes.
President Williams?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All righty. Discussion items, I would like to announce that from some internal conversation with the board, as well as listening and trying to be responsive to our community, we have decided to take this show on the road. And so we will be having some community board meetings at schools throughout the next several months. So I'll take a moment to announce those. We will be at Ottawa Hills in the auditorium on April 17th of this year. We will be at Southwest Middle High in the gymnasium on May 15. We'll be at Union in the auditorium in September 18th exactly. And then we will be at City High Middle Auditorium on October 16th. We wanted to be intentional about making sure that we are accessible to the community, and that we allowed for board meetings in each quadrant of the city, and hope that facilitates more community engagement with this board as well in our meetings. So thanks in advance to Dr. Roby and her team for making that happen for us. And we will move forward to our public comment. And we will have Mr. DeAndre Jones come forward. And you will,
Oh, yes.
Ms. Lewis will give you some instructions, though we know you know how this goes, but we'll put that on the record as well. Okay. Good to see you again, sir. And
Thank you. To 3 minutes per person. You'll need to state your full name before providing your comment. We will then start the timer at the beginning of your public comment and provide you with a 1-minute notice. You will need to complete your comment time upon being notified that 3 minutes have passed.
How you doing, everybody? My name is DeAndre Jones. I wanted to come here and speak to you about esports and what I've been working on for the community. So I have an esports competition I'm doing April 22nd at the Forest Star Theater. I would love for GRPS to get involved, or rather that's getting students to participate. whether that's GRPS has a booth being a vendor there. I have our local NBA G League team, the Grand Rapids Gold. They'll be there for 3 hours. I have our police department. I have our sheriff's department. They just donated me $250. First time the sheriff has actually donated to a young black man like me that's trying to do something and bridge the gap between police and community relations, bridge the gap between the scooter prison pipeline, because that is a real thing. I have Davenport University's coming there, who has a esports team. Davenport will be there. I spoke to the head coach, and he's actually interested in recruiting kids. He isn't recruiting kids now, but if this event goes well, we can actually recruit kids from GRPS to play NBA 2K on the esports team for Davenport. That's actually an opportunity for our students to be able to get college scholarships, either full rides or part-time, playing video games, to regardless if they want to have a career in gaming or esports, or be a professional esports player, or they want to explore other careers like science, technology, arts, math, whatever it happens to be. STEM and STEAM based, and there's other things too, so I don't want to generalize a kid, because it's just like a kid getting recruited to play traditional sports like basketball, football, any other sport, just video games. And so when you say to get off the game, these kids are actually practicing, and they are actually getting college scholarships. And so I have this event going on. I've been working very hard. I've been traveling to school districts across the King County. I've been traveling to other school districts. I've been traveling to Lansing to speak about gun laws, and really trying to be the change I want to see and strengthen our community. And I would love for our students at GRPS to get involved, because I have kids from surrounding school districts and alternative schools, but I don't have any kids from GRPS. And I would really love for our students to get involved, because we truly have an opportunity to create an equitable, sustainable pipeline for careers and scholarships and education. And I've been working hard. I can tell you that I've been losing sleep, and I've been up trying to make sure that I create the best opportunity for our community. And so I just truly want you guys to know I've been working hard. I have an esports event April 22nd at the Forest Star Theater. I have everybody. I even potentially have the state police there. I have some of our local politicians, our state representatives. I have a lot of people from different communities, and I'll be doing this event. And I would truly love for our students to participate. We'll be doing other games that they're interested in too, but right now NBA 2K is the age-appropriate game. We'll have some free food. We'll have vendors. I'll have soul food, because I love soul food, and I would love for the police officers and people from all walks of life to enjoy some good soul food, because everybody's Thanksgiving isn't the same. And so I would truly love for GRPS to allow students to communicate this and get it out there to parents, so we can be able to educate them on the esports space and create equity and create a true sense of community that we would love to see. Thank you.
Mr. Jones, before you go, because your April 22nd is a Saturday, and so what we would need from you, and I'll ask you to either give it to our Executive Director of Athletics and also our Executive Director of Communications, is like some sort of flyer or something that we could communicate to our young scholars to participate.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Any other comments, Dr. Roby?
Oh,
Superintendent.
All right. So Mr. Hendricks mentioned the one book, one city, and then if you happened to watch the news last week, you caught it. And then also I just wanted to share this with the kind of the collection of our brilliant young people as they were sharing what Isaiah Dunn is my hero, what it meant to them, and talking about poetry and talking about literature and making the connection from text to life and text to world. And when you see young people having these really rich discussions about just books, I mean, as a former classroom teacher, I get excited. And so I just wanted to share that with all of you, and then also to lift up our young people at Cesar E. Chavez Elementary School. Today we had our first legislative visit, and in the time that I've been in the district. And so we had a Representative Brinks, Senate Majority Representative Brinks, and Representative Glanville, as well as Representative Fitzgerald, and superintendents across Kent County, Board Trustee Mr. Rodriguez, and others. And what was just so exciting is the young people, as they were the greeters, they welcomed us into the school and offered to certainly escort us to the place that we were supposed to be gathering to talk about what public education looks like. We had an opportunity to do a learning walk to see both an lower elementary classroom, a kindergarten classroom, which was fully bilingual, and then also to see the matriculation up at the 5th grade level where young people who are still in a bilingual course, but they were actually learning a social studies lesson in English. And it was just really nice to see the transition between the two and then just have that conversation. And so it's always good to showcase our schools, but our teams, I want to publicly lift up Principal Garcia and Assistant Principal Chambliss, because you can tell that school community is very solid, and the love and the engagement that you see, it kind of comes out in everyone's pores.
Thank you. And we will go to board comments. I'll start with our student representatives. Ms. Muhammad?
No comment.
Mr. Liggett?
No comment.
All righty. Ms. Wade?
I just wanted to say that I was proud to know, because my daughter don't tell me what's going on till it's over, that they did the teen mental health first aid at Southwest Middle High, and so she received her teen mental health first aid certificate yesterday, and I thought it was cool that she learned how to, see things in her peers and talk to them about their mental health, and they learned a lot of tools to not only help themselves but help others in a mental health crisis. So shout out to them.
Do you know
It's a, I'm gonna tell you guys. I was gonna text it, but we had some other stuff going on. But National Council for Mental Health Wellbeing. I'm not sure, exactly. But
Thank you. Ms. Davis?
I know that parent-teacher conferences are going on this week, and so I just want to say thank you to all of our educators that are working extra hours and meeting with our families, because that's so important, and just encourage parents to attend their students' conferences.
Mr. Rodriguez?
Yeah, I also want to just highlight the legislative visit today at Cesar Chavez. And I think that work is important. And I'm 30 now, so I'm like still kind of removed from school, right? But even for such an older man as myself, I feel like it's important work to get into the classrooms to see what education looks like today. Because even in my long time ago in school, we didn't have smart boards, we didn't have one-to-one technology, we didn't have any of this stuff that is now the stuff you see in almost every classroom across GRPS and other districts. So I think it's important work to be in those classrooms, to see what is going on, to talk to teachers. And I appreciate our state legislators. I appreciate Dr. Roby and the superintendents that came to that visit.
Jackie?
Well, I'll just express my gratitude for the generosity of the district to provide books for our families. I had that experience in my own household where my daughter came home with her 5 books and then asked to go to the bookstore this last weekend because, in her words, I wasn't reading, but this really inspired me to start that again. So it's having an impact and really doing what was intended. So thank you.
Mr. Ross?
Unlikely that any of them are watching, but I want to uplift the ROTC group that won all those national awards. I mean, we often hear about, many of our success stories, but just one of those things that sometimes goes, I guess, unrecognized. So definitely I want to uplift that. Another shout out to Mr. Armstrong and Mr. McMurray for their heavy lift on African Male Achievement Conference. And a shout out to Mr. Jones on his persistence regarding this esports. I think you got some attention here for sure. No, so thank you very much for your persistence on that. And also, just the last thing, Ms. Lewis mentioned about the legislative priorities. I guess just want to offer anyone, if they have any thoughts on what some of our priorities, if you have any thoughts on whether they should be different, adjusted, added to, or whatever the case, please, send a note forward so we can discuss that at our next meeting on the 17th, Ms. Lewis. What is our next meeting? 17th. Yeah. That's it. Thank you.
Ms. Lewis?
Go green.
Go white. Mr. Eatman?
Oh, okay. I thought you had more, Ms. Lewis. No, I wanted to, also congratulate the ROTC. I think that's a major thing, but also highlight that I'm super, super excited that the district is doing our storytelling. I think that is very important for not just parents, but across the city for people to understand what we do and how we're doing it from our mouths. And I'm so excited to see that that is actually happening. We have a lot of exciting things going on in the district, and we are no longer going to be closed mouths on that. So I'm super excited to hear that, and thank you for that. And yes, that's about it. Thank you all for coming out.
Thank you, Ms. Milton.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear that we're going to be, or that our board has decided to be in some other places besides this beautiful building, but it's going to be really great to be in the community as well, and I'm really hoping that that aligns to what people are hoping and wanting to see.
And then I'll make a comment to thank my colleagues on the board for your hard work and your vulnerability for our board retreat. We did some really tough work, and I think the work that we did is going to benefit our scholars. So thank you so much for tapping in and being a part of that hard work. And then I'd like to say a special thank you to Ms. Sharon over at Ridgemore. I had an opportunity to be a part of a parent-teacher conference for my granddaughter tonight, right before coming here. And so she was prompt and concise, yet informative, and also provided me with information on how to help my little grandbaby become a avid learner. So thank you to Ms. Sharon. So if there is nothing else, in appreciation for Mr. Rodriguez, this meeting is adjourned.
Oh. She gabbled. Is that a verb? I don't know. Hilarious.